Welcome back to our weekly news show. The first episode, we've got Sam Gill here from Darts News. Plenty to talk about this week. Of course, the development tour, a few players getting their tour cards for the first time. We've seen the return of the Euro Tour and the return of one of the biggest names in World Darts. Sam, how are you doing, mate?
I'm good, mate. How are you? Busy weekend as usual, but yeah, start of a new week, and it's good to dissect the past weekend.
I know, plenty going on, plenty going on. We'll start with the Euro Tour. Obviously, we haven't seen Euro Tour action for months and months and months. Just the second Euro Tour on the calendar, and a first-time winner on the Euro Tour, Devon Petersen. What a result for him, and that's going to do a lot for his career.
It shows the hard work and dedication pays off, to be honest. Of course, he said at the start of the year about his work with Wayne Mardle and Colin Lloyd, and it's come to fruition. He's basically remodelled his throw as such, and has got new equipment after switching from Unicorn. And he showed that form, of course, at the Summer and Autumn Series, but it's all about translating it into a first title. And he, of course, got so close against Gerwyn Price only a few weeks ago, but to do it on the stage as well, it's just brilliant, and it's great to see. I don't think a darts fan would really agree that Devon of the title at the weekend. I think it's a popular winner for everybody, really.
Yeah. I don't know about you, but when he lost to Gerwyn Price in the Summer Series with that ridiculous average, I was gutted for him, to be honest. So after, again, in the Autumn Series, coming very close, it is nice to see him pick up a trophy. And of course, one of the nicest guys in darts as well. You always want to see him do well.
Mervyn King and Johnny Clayton, for me, I'd say, and Danny Noppert as well. But I'd probably say the first two for sure, because as Devon even said in his post-match interview, Clayton came into the weekend wanting a spot in the World Grand Prix, and it was almost after he won through his first game, it was almost just a free roll from there, knowing he qualified, and he got so close to claiming a second European Tour title, and it's good going for him. And for King as well, of course. Smashing Van Gerwen, but also having the guile to almost just complete that win, but then go on in the tournament instead of going out the next round. Because, of course, the same thing with Taylor. There's almost a fear after you've beaten a big name. Not that Mervyn King's not a big name, but there's always that fear that you're not going to carry it on. But he did, and he showed some brilliant darts over the course of the weekend and deserved his run.
I've got to say, nice to see Merv smiling as well. I mean, you don't see it too often with Merv, but he seemed to be enjoying himself out there. And yeah, I mean, he looked relaxed. He's obviously lost a bit of timber as well, which is going to help on the final day of Euro Tour. You're playing 4 games if you make it to the final. So I think it's definitely positive signs for Merv. His results weren't great in the Summer Series, in the Autumn Series, sorry, should I say, but. Definite positives, and going into the back end of the year, that's what he's going to need. You say about Johnny Clayton, beat some terrific names en route to the final. Of course, beat Peter Wright 6-3. Was that the last 16 or the quarters? I think it was the 16. But Johnny Clayton, as you say, needed that World Grand Prix place, and he's got it. And I think that's going to help him reserve a little bit of money, because he's had some decent runs towards the back end of the year, like to the Players' Championship finals of the last couple of years. So he really needs that, and possibly a good few months in store for Clayton. Do we think?
Yeah, I think so. I think his throw looked rock solid, especially in the final. He just came up against Devon, who, as Paul Nicholson even said on the commentary, he's one of, if not the biggest scorers in World Darts at the moment. Is whenever he hits the first 2 into the treble 20, you know it's going to be a 180 9 times out of 10. And any other day, in my opinion, Clayton would have won that title. But of course, Devon went on to win it. Another name I'd potentially throw into the hat as well is Dave Chisnell. Of course, at the World Series of Darts finals, he was, as I put in my reports over the weekend, he was horrific against Cody Harris. But he came back with a 108 average, continued that form over the course of the weekend. And after some people were saying that I wouldn't say his career was over, but his top form is behind him, he produced once again on the European Tour.
Yeah, 6-0 win against Lucas Weinig, I believe,
Yep.
in his first game of the weekend. And
108 average as well. So.
108 average, yeah. I mean, you can't say much more. If Dave Chisnell plays like that, he's gonna win a tournament soon enough on the TV. But who knows when that is? Who knows when that is? He's definitely got that in him. And if he's producing the sort of form he did against Weinig and he did over the weekend, it can't be too far away. I know we've been saying that for a while, but Dave Chisnell's got a major title in him, I'm sure. What do you think, Sam?
Fingers crossed, mate. Fingers crossed.
Something we quickly have to touch on from the weekend is the crowds. Ian White, obviously, not happy after his game against Maxot. We've seen it many times before. I'm not going to single out the German crowds, but it has quite often been the German crowds on the Euro Tour that have the light kind of shed on them with this issue. It's obvious that he wasn't happy and the crowd were shouting and whistling when he was throwing for a double. It's something that you can't do a whole lot about, but it is an issue, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. Rob Cross summed it up last year in the World Series event, the German Darts Masters. He came off the stage and said they were the most disgraceful crowd he's ever played in front of. And sometimes you can concur with that, but this weekend in particular, certain sessions were more fuller than others. Of course, and it's a good thing in future for the PDC when it comes to coronavirus. They literally just had all the fans sat on one section of the arena instead of opening up the whole arena. So you are going to hear more crowd noise because they're all together. But yeah, it's good. It's kind of good and bad. James Wade himself said about it in his game against Nico Kurz. He said himself that the crowd were brilliant, and he didn't have any complaints about it. Of course, for James, it was an interesting weekend as well because he ended up missing his flight coming into the country, but still he played really well. And yeah, in terms of the German crowd, good and bad. It depends on what type of player you are, if you can get on with it or whether it rolls you up. But in a country like Germany where everybody's so darts mad, you just got to learn to deal with it a lot of the time, in my opinion.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. You have to say in the final session, they were immaculate. They were just clapping. There was no putting off of any of the players. I know there were no German players involved in the final session, but the crowd were brilliant. And in that session, it's something that I think players, to some extent, are going to have to deal with. Obviously, you don't want the whistling on the doubles.
Yeah.
But there's going to be noise from a German crowd if there's a German player playing. It's the same in Austria for Mensur Sirovic, of course. And to some extent, it's the same if you've got an Englishman at the World Championships playing someone from outside the UK. So it's part of darts, and I don't think it's going to be disappearing anytime soon.
No, sometimes as well it can't work in your favour because Mensur last week in Salzburg, he played brilliant, produced one of the best averages of the weekend, but he still lost to Krzysztof Ratajski. And like I say, it depends on what kind of player you are, because somebody like Ratajski, it won't rile him up. He'll just go up on stage, play his game and come off. And the same for James Wade, to be honest. As much as he can get rolled up about certain aspects of the game, I don't think that crowd's one of them. He just gets on with his game, and it's why he's so good. So for certain players, you do have to learn to deal with it. But for certain players like Gerwyn Price, I'd say otherwise in terms of the whistling and boom. But that's kind of calmed down now as well. Fans are more, especially as Gerwyn Price has become an even better player, have got behind him a bit more and have stopped the whistling and booing as much. Yeah.
You mentioned Krzysztof Ratajski. We'll have a quick look at the World Grand Prix draw, which has just been made this morning at +10. Incredible draw, it's got to be said. Rob Cross, Gary Anderson is a match that sticks out for me. What are your thoughts on that one, and are there any that stick out for you, Ken?
In terms of Cross and Anderson, with Anderson, it's going to come with the territory now. We've seen it on the Players' Championship Series. When he's not a seed anymore, he draws all the big names, and it's up to Gary to produce his best form again to get back into those seeded positions. And of course, he's taken a bit of time off due to not wanting to be involved in Hildesheim or Niedenhausen or Salzburg due to his family and coronavirus. So it depends on how his game is. But being a runner-up in this tournament in 2016, he definitely knows his way around the double start format. For Cross as well, it's going to be an intriguing game because we've seen glimmers over the past 2 weeks of Cross getting back towards his best, and it's just going to be up to him to deal with that against Anderson and to produce some of his best form again on that stage.
I've got to say the short format makes it incredibly interesting as well, because obviously it's just first to 2 sets in the first round, 6 legs. So with Cross starting to reach some of the form, obviously reaching the World Series final, looks all right over the weekend. Of course, lost out to Devon Petersen, the eventual winner. And Gary Anderson, we don't know what he's going to, if he plays like he did in the Premier League, he'll be fine, and you expect him to have a deep run. But there's absolutely no telling which Gary Anderson's going to turn up.
I think as well, personally, I think Van Gerwen's in trouble, if I'm being completely and utterly honest. If not his first round, but his second round. Of course, with Ratajski, like I said previously, he's a steady player. He doesn't get phased. And against Van Gerwen, I don't see it troubling him facing the world number one, and especially with his form in major tournaments this year, barring the UK Open, which, in my opinion, Gerwen Price should have won. He got very lucky against Price, and of course in the World Match Play and Premier League as well, he got dumped out of both of them quite early on, and so for me, Ratajski, it might have him in the first round, but then again, he might have Petersen or De Souza in the second round, which is another one of the main ties for definite. Two of the most consistent players on the tour, and yeah, I think if not that first game, maybe that second game. And if he doesn't lose that second game or first game, he'll go on to win it. We know what Van Gerwen's like. If he can survive that early scare, he'll go on and win it. But there will be massive question marks going into the tournament for sure. Yeah,
I tend to agree. I think Christoph Ratajski's got a great chance there over the format. Looked good at the Euro Tour, looked good at the World Series. He's probably playing some of the darts of his life at the moment. I can't remember what the average was in the Euro Tour. I believe it was in the round of 16 where he absolutely obliterated his opponent with about 110, I think it was. But you've got to. I'd be interested to see what
107 it was. 107
was it? 107. It's going to be interesting, that match, and I'll be interested to see what the bookies make of that, because Ratajski, for me, if you put him at long odds, you're a little bit silly, because what Van Gerwen's been producing over the last, it's probably a couple of months now, has not been much better than the level we've seen from Ratajski. So,
to be honest with Van Gerwen, he hasn't been playing badly, but as everybody always says, it's the level we've become accustomed to with Van Gerwen. You could say, is he going for a crisis? Is he not? I tend to stay in the middle with it, to be honest, because a few more major tournaments where he goes barren, or even a few Pro Tours and Euro Tours, and the question will get asked. But for me, players are just upping their level against him, and they know what it takes to beat him, and it's taking out the right shots at the right moments. And for me as well, it's with him going into the latter end of the tournament, he's in a really bad section. You've got James Wade, who knows how to beat him. You've got Mervyn King, who knows how to beat him. Adrian Lewis against Chris Dobey, also in that section. For me, Lewis got in by the skin of his teeth. Jeffrey Deswan, I'd rather have Lewis there over Deswan, because Deswan hasn't really shown his best form and potentially needs some time to get his best game back. But that could be another intriguing tie, in my opinion. Lewis against Dobey in the first round. Can Dobey see off Lewis, or will Lewis produce some more resurgent form like he did in the match play?
One of the ties I quickly want to highlight is Dave Chisnall against Glenn Durrant. Of course, saw Glenn top in the Premier League. One of the form players, it has to be said, in the world right now. Dave Chisnall, as we mentioned earlier on the Euro Tour, looked good. Over a short format, we know Glenn's terrific on the doubles, but if Dave Chisnall can get the doubles like he did in that game against Lucas Veinig, he was incredible in that game, then he could well be in with a chance of beating Duzzer in that one.
Yeah, I think so. For me though, with Durrant, his doubling's his best part of his game. if he continues playing like he has on the doubles, especially at double 16. It's the same with Devon against Jose de Souza with double 8. Both of those players are rock solid on that double. And for me, Chisnell, in a way, sometimes while his scoring can be really good, his doubling can desert him. But it depends, really, because if he can play, like you say, like he did at the weekend, compared to how he did 2 weeks ago, for me, yeah, it's going to be a close tie. It'll either be really close or really wide. It'll be 2-0, 2-1 to open up the tournament, and it's one of the ties of the round for me, definitely.
100%. Final tie to quickly touch on: Nathan Aspinall against Gabriel Clemens. Probably haven't seen the best of Gabriel Clemens this year. Probably saw the best of him in 2019, but we know he's an extremely dangerous player. Nathan Aspinall probably, in terms of form, inside the top 5 or 6 in the world at the moment. Another tie that you've got to think whoever gets that first set is going to be in a very, very good position. And there's no reason to say that it can't be Gabriel Clemens.
To be honest, with Aspinall at the weekend as well, he was very unlucky against Chisnell, who he played with Chisnell getting through to the last 8. 6-3 defeat, 102 average for Chisnell, 3 180s. So Aspinall's not playing badly, and it's going to be one of those tournaments, I think, for both of these players. Clemens will either, a bit like the Chisnell-Durham game, Clemens will either produce some amazing form or he'll just go off the boil. He's kind of shown that as of late. He's been one of the most consistent players on the tour for quite a long time, up there with Noppert, de Souza, as of late. But while at the Autumn Series he played really well, since then he's not been at his best, and he showed that on the Euro Tour at the weekend against Daryl Gurney. He was very under par, and Gurney played really well, but he just wasn't at his best. So it'll depend how he does on this double start format. It's the same with every single player who's coming into the tournament. Devon Petersen could have a shocker in the first round. Jose de Souza could have a shocker. And it's the same with Clemens. He could either defeat Aspinall with relative ease, could get embroiled in a dogfight, or Aspinall could just ease through. And like you say, he's in the top 5, in my opinion, in the world at the moment as well, Aspinall. And it'll be a big confidence booster for him as well going into the Premier League playoffs if he can produce a good run in Coventry. And he's shown as well behind closed doors that he can play that darts behind closed doors, getting through to those playoffs. So I think Aspinall all day long, but Clemens could trouble him definitely over the short format.
Yeah, I'll go with Aspinall as well. But we had some terrific ties drawn for the World Grand Prix, and I'm looking forward to it. Not long now, 6th to the 12th of October at the Ricoh Arena. A great place for us posh fans over in Coventry.
Oh, God.
We've got the development tour being played over the weekend, 3 events and a couple of new tour card holders. Of course, we've got the World Youth Championship being played today, from 2 p.m, I believe. We'll get the finalists for the World Youth. Final being played at the Players' Championship finals. We don't know where that's being held yet. Not at Minehead. That's all we know surrounding that one. But a couple of new tour card holders. Keane Barry, just 18 years of age. What a talent he is. And of course, Barry Van Peer. We've seen him on the tour before. We've seen him with troubles of dartitis at the Grand Slam of Darts, of course. Just terrific to see him back. And what a story for both of them, really. Yeah,
for Keane Barry, he took his chances over the weekend. Back-to-back wins. Both of those events had the top 4 in the development tour, showing that they were long and away top players on the tour. Of course, Barry got so close at Q School at the start of the year as well, and it'll be interesting to see how he plays on the main tour. I think he'll hit the ground running, or he might take a bit of time to get up there, but it's undoubted the amount of talent this young man has. And the same with Barry Van Peer. Of course, he's been through the Darting Doldrums, Grand Slam, Dutch Open as well. Stands out for me when he's playing pairs last year, and the dartitis was still there. We don't know how his game is, but seemingly it's good enough to at least win one event this year, but also reach the latter stages in multiple this weekend, and he did enough. There was two other Dutch lads, Damien Mol and Kevin Dutz, who won events as well. Damien Mole got so close to getting a tour card, but he was very much one weekend. He did really well. And for Berry, of course, he won a title earlier on in the development tour, so it proved the difference. Also, Ryan Meikle as well. For me, been one of the most dominant players on the development tour. Not as dominant as Ted Everts, but or Luke Humphries for that matter. But as a player who will be leaving the development tour at the end of the year, he's just played amazing, and he was far and away the best player on the development tour this year. I think personally, in terms of the Dev Tour as well, we should have it like this every year, a bit like with the series. Have 2 blocks of events, or even just 1 block of an event on a weekend, because as we kind of saw, the cream rose to the top. Instead of us often getting players who potentially play well and win 1 or 2 events and end up winning a tour card, you had Barry Van Peer, Damien Mole, Kean Barry, Ted Everts got to a few latter stages, Ryan Meikle, all starring over the course of the weekend.
Yeah. Ryan Meikle for me is a perfect advert for the Dev Tour, really. Maybe 3 or 4 years ago, we didn't really know too much about him. But in the last 2 or 3 years, had that run at the UK Open this year. We've seen him on TV a few times now. He looks a very serious player. He's not at the level yet where he's going to be qualifying for major after major, but with the averages and the performance he's putting in, there's no reason why he won't be there in the next 18 months, 2 years time. It'd be interesting to see at least where he sort of places on the Pro Tour Order of Merit in the next couple of years. We'll touch on Kean Barry as well. I've been fortunate enough to sort of follow Kean Barry around over the last couple of years. Terrific on the JDC circuit. Of course, won the European Open in the JDC. Won the World Championships, and he won the Super 16 against Luke Littler in Milton Keynes. Terrific on that tour. Terrific in the BDO World Junior Championship final against Leighton Bennett. That was. He's done everything there is in the youth game, Kean Barry. Although he's only 18, and obviously he has plenty more years on the development tour. This being just his first year, believe it or not, on the development tour. He's achieved everything there is at his age group. Won on the development tour now, as we say. I think it's the right time, and I think he's got the game to really challenge on the Pro Tour. I'm not saying he's going to go and win an event, he's going to go and reach majors, but if he can start reaching last 16s, maybe a quarter final here or there, he's going to cause some big names problems. And we've seen it with the averages, seen him in the Modus Live League as well this year. A very dedicated and talented young lad, and I feel like he's going to go far, and we'll see it sooner rather than later, I feel.
Yeah, definitely. For me, you've almost got 2 players finishing the development tour development in Ryan Meikle and Kean Barry, in both different stages of their career. Meikle, of course, at 24, he only has 1 more year on the Pro Tour to kind of prove himself, and of course, getting into the World Championships as well. It will help him in terms of getting into that top 64. But he's got to take that form now onto the Pro Tour and do a bit like what Luke Humphries has done in patches on the Pro Tour so far, and of course the World Championships. For Kean Barry being so young and getting a tour card in his first year, it shows how much of a talent this young man is. Of course, winning the BDO and JDC World Youth Championships as well, he could have a third on the way in November and complete the set. And like I said, it just shows how good he is. And for me, he will be a dark horse on the Players Championship Series next year. His scoring power, in particular, can rival some of the best in the game. It wouldn't even surprise me Players Championship 1 next year if we had Kean Barry even getting to a final. I'm going to put that out there. We often see in this first event of the year when players aren't exactly at their 100% best after a break. We see a first time finalist. We've seen lots of Peter Jakes in the past do it. Of course, it's different coming from the Challenge Tour to the main tour, from the development tour to the main tour. But for me, Kean Barry, that's a good bet potentially for next year, I'd say.
He does indeed. And in terms of the World Youth, are there any names that you'd like to put out there to reach the final?
Oh, you've almost got to go with the tried and tested for me. And Ebbets, of course. Ryan Meek got to the semi-finals last year. Kean Barry, of course. For me, Jeffrey Deswan will be the main one. Number 1 seed today. Not been in the best form for obvious reasons due to his shoulder surgery. But a player who needs to prove himself. And for me, what better way than to get to the World Youth Final at the end of the year? It wouldn't surprise me if though there's a shock in terms of who gets through. Of course, you've got the main names as well as them, the likes of Harry Ward, Bradley Brooks, who could pose a problem. But with the way that the group format is in the World Youth Championships, where you've got 1 seed on a board with the other 96 players, we could at least see 1 or 2 players go out very early, and the field just get blown wide open for me.
Yeah. Problem is there's so many names there that you couldn't do, so many outsiders. A name that springs to mind for me is Niels Zonneveld. Looked very sort of steady on the development tour this year, and a player that if he gets a decent draw, I haven't seen the draw yet, but if he gets a decent draw, then he could, by the time this goes out, he could be in the World Youth Championship final. And there's one more name I will quickly mention, Keelan Kay. I think he placed, I think it was 11th on the Order of Merit. Searching my brain for that one, not too sure. But he has been terrific this year in terms of his consistency. I believe he's reached a final, maybe 2.
He reached the final this past weekend as well.
Yeah. But another terrific player, great temperament. And a player to look out for, only, I believe, 18 years of age. So plenty of time for Keelan Kay as well.
For me with Kay, he's like a lot of youth players for me. He's very good, but he has as the Live League kind of showed, I don't know if it was the conditions. Some games he'd be really good, an average really high, and then other games he'd go off the boil and average, early 70s, mid 70s even. But of course, it's like I say, it's a different environment. He's in his home, and he's kind of showed this weekend getting to a final. Of course, not getting near getting a tour card or a World Championship spot, but it's not really on the agenda. But for him to almost show that form that he showed at times in the Live League shows that it works. And for me, going forward in terms of the Challenge Tour as well, it's going to be good to watch the likes of David Evans as well. Scott Mitchell, see if they do as well as they did in the Live League, and see if they can carry on the form that the likes of Keelan Kay have shown. For me, Gert Nenches as well, in terms of a name for today, a very good player for me, and one of many Dutchmen who could pose a threat later on today.
The final news of the week to go through is possibly the biggest news. The impending return of the five-time champion of the world, Raymond van Barneveld. He's going to be at Q School in January. We know that. Is he gonna get a tour card? Is essentially the question. We've seen over the last couple of years. I did a video on it in terms of averages. The evidence suggests, yes, he will get a tour card. Over the last 101 competitive games, the average is 93. But we don't know what Q School's going to be like, and of course, he doesn't know what the draw is going to be like and what standard he's going in with. So, is Barney going to get a tour card, Sam?
I'm not 100%. If I'm being honest, I'm leaning towards no, because as you know, as somebody who's covered the BDO in the past, all those players will, especially with the BDO's demise and the WDF and other federations not really being 100% in terms of next year, a lot of players will come over, and Q School for me, barring any sort of restrictions, which of course we don't know in terms of Q School yet, will be very much as rammed as usual. Depends what route he takes for me, UK or European, because UK is going to be really tough. European less so, but then again, you've got players in the past few years who'd who failed to get through European Q School. Of course, Krzysztof Ratajski failed to get through European Q School the very first time he played in it. And for me, it depends as well on how much Barney actually wants it. By the sounds of things, from his new manager, he of course has looked after Jeffrey Deswan and still does. He's very much putting him under a strict regime in terms of fitness, practice with Jeffrey, and other aspects of his game instead of him like he did in the past few years. And he even said it himself, his new manager. He almost just floated along, and he said that if he almost starts doing interviews where he's really negative and he gets really negative about his game, and it'll be over. The partnership will be over, and that'll be that. So the onus is on Barney to, especially in the next few months. He's got a few months now that he's announced his comeback. He's got 4 months, just under that, to get himself right. And of course, he's been playing during lockdown as well. He's been keeping his arm in. He's not exactly not been practicing. So certain aspects of me lead to yes. It'd be a great story to see him get through. As much as people will say what they want about Barney, he's a legend of the game. And if he can turn up on a cold day in Wigan, and still perform next year, and instead of just getting invites, for me, I don't personally want to see him just get invites just to the World Series and even the Premier League. I don't want that. And many people involved in not involved in darts, but fans of darts will say exactly the same thing. And Barney probably has that himself. He wants to build himself back up again. And as he even said, I won't go begging for those invites. If they give them to me, they're given to me. But he's got to prove himself again. And especially with the insane standard on the Players' Championship Series, even if he gets through Q School, whether or not he'll win games is another matter for me.
Yeah. One thing I will say is he's probably going to be in slightly better condition than lots of players going into Q School, and I would imagine that he would take the European Q School route. Lots of players haven't had the competitive action, even if it's just 1 or 2 weekends. Being with the management and having the chance to practice with a top PDC player in Jeffrey Desvan, then he is going to be well conditioned. You'd like to think so anyway. So that is one thing in Barney's favour. And one thing I don't think people have considered, if he doesn't get a tour card, and he said he's allowing 3 years to get the tour card, what is the route from there? Do we see Barney on the Challenge Tour? Because everybody knows if you perform well in the first weekend of the Challenge Tour, that's pretty much an open invitation to compete on the Pro Tours. So for Barney, he's got a lot of options, and I think lots of people will be excited to see him back. For me, it just depends which Barney turns up. But I do expect from the interviews I've seen to have desire and want to play these tournaments, which is obviously a huge thing for himself.
As long as he doesn't run into Krzysztof Ratajski when he gets back onto the tour, because that was his Achilles heel in his final years, for just drawing Krzysztof Ratajski all the time. It's a bit like what Gary Anderson's kind of seen when you fall out of the seedings on the Pro Tour. You just get horrific draws, and of course Barney will have to go through that route. If he gets through Q School, he will have to go through those draws, and it'll be a real test to see if he actually wants it or not. If he can get through and he gets on the Pro Tour, whether or not he can get to the latter stages of events and maybe even win them, or whether or not he says that enough's enough at the end of the year, next year, even if he's got his tour card, and just thinks, I can't compete at this level again. But at least he's given it that go. As he even said in an interview last week, he's still at that age where he can give it time. He's only in his early 50s, and for me, he at least has that 3 years if he can get a tour card. And of course, if he doesn't, how long he will actually remain on the tour if he gets one after that is another matter. But I think as well, in terms of his farewell tour last year, people will say what they want about Barney's farewell tour, and him complaining a lot and saying, I don't want to go to Wigan, I don't want to go to Barnsley. But he has that chance again to almost do it on his own terms, and instead of announcing a farewell tour and then it not really coming to fruition, he has that chance to build himself up again and let's just see at the start of next year, and if he can get through, all the attention will be on Barney at that first Players Championship event. But like you say, even if he doesn't, Scott Mitchell has shown it this year. Of course, due to coronavirus, it's been a very different challenge tour, but he has shown that what one event win can do in terms of Players Championships. And if we can get back to normal next year, the big players will skip more events. This year, it's almost been they have to go to the events because we haven't had them. But next year, if we do have them, especially with the Premier League starting around that time again, it could be very much that Barney takes advantage. And even if he is on the Challenge Tour, we could see him get the tour card through that route next year if he's got the desire and want.
Yeah, completely agree. Very interesting to see which Barney turns up in early January, of course, at Q School. Covered the Development Tour, we covered the European Tour, and we covered the World Grand Prix draw, which takes place from 6th to 12th of October at the Ricoh Arena. Thank you very much for joining me, Sam. We've had plenty to talk about this week. I'm sure we'll have plenty to talk about next week as well, with the World Grand Prix taking place, of course. Thank you very much, and we'll see you soon.